the last thing we're going to move into, Brandon, is the Houston Cougars. And they get knocked off for the first time this year by the Navy midshipmen, 46-40. And when I was looking at this score, Brandon, when I was looking at the scoring updates as they were coming in on ESPN, I was kind of getting a little. I was for a second being like, oh, is Navy playing Tennessee this week? Are they playing Tennessee? Because I thought the Cougars started out a little slow. Maybe not slow, but I don't know if it's the Cougars started out slow or the Cougars underestimated Navy and Navy came in and made them pay. Because it was only 10-10 at the end of the first, but by the time the fourth quarter started, it was 41-27. And I'm sitting there, and then I saw the final score of 41-40. I'm like, damn, Houston almost came back. They almost came back in this game, but Brandon, because of the conference that Houston plays in, with one loss now in the conference, can the Cougars still make the college football playoff, or are their chances shot?
I think it's going to be tough for them. I really do. And I think that it's also because of the fact that you just got to, I think, take a look at the fact that they're not a Power 5 team.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that still, I know we've talked about it, and they have been good. The Houston Cougars have been really, really good this season. But I think we also, again, we need to talk about the fact that they are not Power 5, and we can't forget about that because I don't think other people have forgotten about it either. And I think that's a big thing, is the fact that they are not. And the committee will take a Power 5 before they take the Houston Cougars.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? I don't think so. And I think that the Houston Cougars have been very, very good this season. But I think they're also going to take a look and say, oh, who'd they lose to? Well, if you're going to look at them and say who'd they lose to, and they lost to, well, Navy. And then you look at a team in the Power 5, and let's say they lost to, they're also 5-1, but
Mm-hmm.
their loss came to
a Power 5 team. Like, let's say
let's say that it came to a good Power 5 team. Let's even say that it came to Washington.
Okay. I was going to say like either a Colorado in the Pac-12, kind of that middle of the pack, or like an Oklahoma in the Big 12, a team that's got a few losses, but people wouldn't expectantly say they're bad. Like, it's not a Washington State, it's not a Kansas.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So like middle of the pack, Big 12 or Pac-12 Power 5 team. That's what you're trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I still think that people are going to look at that and go, well, that makes more sense. That makes more sense. Like, I would rather have that team because their loss is to a team that's viable, to a team that was, pretty good, ranked pretty high, ranked well, all that stuff. I think that's what people would be looking for.
Well, and here's the big thing I think of is if we're going against, like, if it's Houston, like, let's say Houston only finishes with one loss and this is their only loss. The big thing it's going to come down to is, are they going to be going up against a Pac-12 team, or are they going to be going up against a Big 12 team for that final spot? Because when I look at the standings as of right now, I mean, just looking at the Power 5s alone, the ACC, right now it looks like it'd be Clemson, Virginia Tech. If Clemson wins, Virginia Tech would be kind of that spoiler. But if Clemson wins, they go undefeated, they're going to be a lock. So I kind of think the ACC, if Clemson's that ACC team, it's a lock. If not, then we have a discussion because the team would then have one loss. They're the only ones in that conference without a loss. Baylor, right now they're undefeated. However, the thing about any Big 12 team you got to throw out there, and with Houston, I'm going to say it now, the Big 12 is the only conference that they can beat out with one loss because of the conference championship. Now, if you're saying, well, Ricky, what if Baylor has no losses? Then that's a different story because they would be the outright champion unless West Virginia goes undefeated as well. That's the big thing that would be going on because the Big 12 this year isn't going to have a conference championship. Oh, well, guess what? West Virginia and Baylor play each other. So that'll be settled out by the end of the year. The Big 10, I think they're a lock. I think Michigan and Ohio State, it's looking like it's going to be whoever wins from that side. Hell, it could even be Nebraska with the way they've been playing with undefeated. Could be one of those three teams. Alabama looks like a lock for the playoff right now with how they're playing, and whoever wins the SEC is going to get in. The big one is it going to be Washington, Baylor, or Houston? And as of right now, I kind of like the Big 12 is interesting because what if like Baylor loses a game and then Baylor beats West Virginia? Because they don't have that title game, Houston could have a chance. So you're saying there's a chance, Ricky? Yes, I am. But if it's a Washington from the Pac-12, then I'm saying no because the Pac-12 has that conference championship game. That's going to be the big decider of who they're going up against when the committee has to decide and if that Power 5 team has a championship game in their conference.
I think that's important. I definitely think it is. I think you really do want to believe that the Houston Cougars do have a chance. I'm not saying that they don't.
Only if it's against a Big 12. If it's against a Big 12 team that the top two teams are tied. That's the only way they have a chance at this point because they're out of the Power 5.
They certainly are. I think that.
But you're right. I would love to have them in there.
The only chance they still got is if they win the rest of their games and they beat Louisville.
I was going to ask, how big does that if they beat Louisville, how big is that win even though Louisville's they're a one-loss team?
Did you see how Louisville's played?
have I seen how Louisville's played, Brandon?
So you have.
Of course.
So you have. Okay.
Lamar Action Jackson is like if I was a 10-year-old kid, I'd have his posters all over my room.
Good. So you have seen how he's played. All right.
I have his posters all over my room. Maybe.
So that's what I'm saying is that I think that does make a difference, and I think that would hold weight.
It's a top 10 team as of right now. Top 10 team.
I certainly think it would carry some big weight if they could beat everyone else and Louisville. I don't even think it would matter how big you beat Louisville by. You just got to beat Louisville, and Louisville in the meantime has to remain where they are as well. That's the only way that I think that Houston is going to continue to be considered.
Now, I got one more kind of curveball that I want to throw in here, and this is the only other thing that I think makes this a little bit harder for Houston, is if they would have lost to like a Connecticut, they would have been fine. You know what? We lost a game, but you know what? We can still win out in the American West and make the conference title game. Well, now that they're 5-1, Navy's sitting at 4-1. They're on the same side of the conference. So now Houston has to not only win out in the conference, but they have to hope that Navy loses another game. So you're not just destiny is not in your hands. It's kind of in your hands because of course you have to win out, but it's not completely in your hands because Navy still has to lose one game. If Navy wins out, they are going to the American Conference Championship from the West side. And if Houston doesn't get a chance to play for that conference title game, no way they make the playoff. No way they make the playoff, even as a one-loss team.
I think that's pretty accurate. I think that at the end of the day, we have to see how the rest of it kind of shakes out as well, because I think that's also going to play a major role in how everything else goes. Because right now, you are looking at Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, Michigan, Washington, and Texas A&M that are the only undefeateds left. They're the only undefeated teams left. So we have to see how the rest of that shakes out and who picks up the next L.
And I know it's the AP, not the college committee, but I would think the committee would go as a top 4 after this week: Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, Washington. So that would be our playoff right now. those 4 teams, because I don't know if they would put in a Michigan or a Texas A&M when they're not leading their conference like Washington is. So that's just something to look at. And Houston fans, if you're new to the podcast and you're a Houston Cougar fan, I am one of your biggest supporters. I love the Houston Cougars. Just like it's kind of like my 3 underdog teams this year that I kind of like to cheer for: Houston, Louisville, and then I do have a soft spot in my heart for that burnt orange. I don't know why. I don't know why I have a soft spot for that burnt orange and those hook 'em horns, Brandon. But I do. I just do. Whether it's Shaka Smart, whether it's Charlie Strong, I do, even though those aren't my favorite teams. But before I wrap this up, is there anything that we missed before we go into Swanee's final thoughts?
No, I think we covered it.
Well, you know what? Let's go right into it. This is how we end each week on the Primetime Podcast. Brandon Swanson gives you his final thoughts and, of course, Swanee's final thoughts. Take it away, Swanee.
Well, everybody, I'm sure by this time you've heard about what's going on at the Rogers Center and the Toronto Blue Jays. They're going to be pouring beer into cups at the stadium for the rest of the postseason after a fan threw, again, a can at a Baltimore outfielder earlier in the playoffs. Last year, the Blue Jays had a ban selling beer cans in the upper deck at their stadium during the ALCS because fans threw cans on the field earlier in the playoffs during a win against Texas. What's wrong with Canadians? That's what it comes down to. What is wrong with Canada's fans at the Rogers Center that makes you, I don't like that player. Let's just peg him with a beer can. All right, have some class, okay? At least just throw the beer out on him. At least it won't hurt as much. Ultimately, I think, come on, have some class. Though, you shouldn't be doing that. Don't be that disruptive. Have a good time. But really, you're going to throw beer cans at him. It's even worse if it's bottles, and they've done that at Rogers Center too. I think that there's something in the water up there in Canada, and people, after this election, want to move there. I don't know if you want to move to Canada.
I think it's what's in the water just around Niagara Falls, because Toronto, Buffalo, Bills Mafia, it's kind of all going to hell. I mean, I don't know what it's like because when you said that, Brandon, the first thing that popped into my head as a kid, my first kind of, what's the word I'm looking for, just exposure to that was the Red Sox Yankee series, the one where the Red Sox came back down 0-3 and Yankee fans did that. I just don't get why people do that at all. Why do you got to do that? Keep it classy, just like Swanee said. But that's going to do it for the Primetime Podcast this week. I hope you guys enjoyed it, because I know me and Swanee really had a good time recording this one for you. Let us know what you guys think down below in the comment section, whether you're listening on Blog Talk Radio or YouTube. If you're listening on YouTube, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. If you're on Blog Talk Radio, hit that subscribe button. Make sure to check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/Most Valuable Podcast. Our next big goals, we're trying to get lapel mics here at Most Valuable Podcast. We love the support that we get from subscribers and from you guys viewing the videos. But if you want to help a little bit more, go ahead, check out the Patreon podcast. We've got some cool rewards that you guys can get as well for helping us out. I want to thank you guys for checking out this podcast one last time. And for Brandon Swanson and myself, Ricky Widmer, as always, have a good day, everybody.
Thank you for listening to this MVP podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Most Valuable Pod for more great podcasts.